Okay, well that, like I said, we'll have a kind of an abbreviated business meeting tonight. And what I'll do now is introduce Phillip Telfer and let him introduce his family, and they are going to show us a little bit about their hobby. Well, like I say, we're in for a treat. I've seen this group at the farmers market in New Braunfels several times, and even though I've turned for almost 15 years, I would stand fascinated watching them. And I'm just going to turn it over to Phillip now and let him introduce his family and let them walk us through some projects. And I think they're going to tell us they've created a small business out of their hobby. And for those of us in the club that are looking at kind of moving into the small business realm of our turning projects, it might be some good information for us. Phillip, thanks for coming.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having us here tonight. Yes, and I've got most of my family here, my wife Mary, and then CJ, Hannah, and Grace. Now, the information they pulled off of the website, our website, which has not been updated in 6 years, had CJ listed as 15 years old. He's now 21. And has Grace listed at 13. She's now 19. And Hannah is not 10. She is now 16. So, great. So what we're going to be doing, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about our story, how we got involved in wood turning, and at the same time doing some turning on this treadle lathe that I designed and built primarily for demonstrating at the New Braunfels Farmers Market, where we could show the type of work that we were doing and more to both entertain people and but also to stay busy when it was a little slow. But the first project I'm going to be doing is going to be the classic throw top, which is kind of our little part of our little logo. How many of you ever, when you grew up, did a string throw top? Okay, so like most kids today don't. So how this started was when I was a kid. I grew up in the state of Oregon, which is a very wood industry state. The junior high, the high school I went to, had robust shop programs, and I was drawn to those. So in junior high, I went to shop class for all those years and loved woodworking. Got into high school, continued on with shop class, and I remember on one rotation we got to do the lathe once on a rotation. And everything else in woodworking is measure twice, cut once, except for the lathe. And in this case, they had given us basically a template that we had to follow. They gave us no training. There was just, there's the lathe, there's some tools, here's what you got to copy. And I think I did a pretty good job, but it always stuck with me how much I enjoyed it. It was just a pleasure. Except that was the last time. That was the first and last time I thought I'd ever touch a lathe. And then fast forward, now I'm a dad, and we're living in a culture where kids, what are they doing? They're playing video games, they're in front of screens, and here I've got 4 kids, and I'm like, I just don't want them stuck in front of a screen playing video games while they're growing up. I want them to do something. So we started talking about starting a small family business with the priority of getting my children involved in something that would keep them active, teach them some entrepreneurial skills, help them how to learn to handle finances, to work with customers. And so that was a vision I had. CJ was 11 years old at the time. And so that was 10 years ago. And we talked about, as a family, what could we start? And we were at a museum. And in this museum, they had a hands-on display of old wooden toys. And so my kids flocked to them, and I thought, what an ironic thing that in a 21st century where everything's driven by batteries or power or it's electronic, that kids would still be intrigued by something that's wood and tangible. And my kids just flocked around all these wooden toys, and then it's like the light bulb went off. Maybe there's still a market for wooden toys. And so I thought, well, maybe there's not, but I looked at most of the toys, they were turned. And I'm like, oh, I know how they made those. Those are done on a lathe. So we had a little family meeting, and I said, okay, I think I got a business for us. What about we start learning how to make wooden toys? And they, of course, what kid wouldn't want to make toys, So they're like, yeah, that's great. So that year, CJ was 11 years old. I bought our first mini jet lathe. I think I invested like $500 at Christmas time to get it, thinking like, oh my goodness, I can't believe how expensive this is going to be. Not knowing, like you all know, that's the cheapest thing you're actually going to ever buy. And so that's one of the first things we started was tops. And we lived out in the country at the time. We were living in rural Illinois, and we burned firewood, a lot of hardwoods there. And so we would literally pick a piece of oak or walnut or cherry off the wood pile. We didn't have any other tools except the lathe, so we were using a hatchet to kind of knock off the edges. We did have a chop saw, kind of square it up, and then we just started learning to make tops. At first it was a father-son project, and shortly after that, my daughter, who was a few years older than CJ, so she'd have been like 12, 13 years old, she's like, that's interesting. Can I learn how to do that? I said, absolutely. And then one by one, all of my children just were inclined to learn. And so we taught them. And then in 2013, we moved to Texas, to New Braunfels, and we discovered that they had a really robust farmers market. And so we put in an application, and they had a special heart for young entrepreneurs. So our kids got fast-tracked into the New Braunfels Farmers Market and have been there for 10 years. One of the things that was very difficult was that at the beginning, when you have all these little kids and they're selling stuff that they have made themselves, people would come by and they would look at it and they would say, oh, that's very nice. Did your dad make that? And they're like, no, I made that. Oh, you mean like your dad made it and you painted it? Like, no, I made it. And like, they wouldn't be convinced, especially Hannah, who was 9 years old when she started woodturning. So then I started thinking, wouldn't it be great if we could demonstrate and the kids could show that they're actually making this? And so I got interested in the subject of treadle lathes. Many people are familiar with pole lathes, but pole lathes are a big problem because, they turn this way and then they turn that way. They turn this way and they turn that way. And I've seen them demonstrated before. Didn't interest me at all. I thought treadle lathes, it always turns in the same direction, except there's not a lot of information out there on treadle lathes. And so I spent 6 months trying to learn everything I could, and it doesn't take long to pretty much exhaust the internet when it comes to treadle lathes. And shame on me, I've not put anything up about this one that you're going to see functioning tonight. But as I learned about treadle lathes, most of the time when they build them, this bottom half is pretty somewhat typical of what treadle lathes might have been built in the past. But obviously the top part of this is a 21st century lathe. This one's from Harbor Freight. And the thought I had is that when you look at treadle lathes, the very few that I could find, everything's wooden bits, and then you're starting to pay a lot of money for a machinist to build special parts to put into your wooden bits. And I thought, you know what? It's going to cost me more to have someone custom machine parts for me. It would be cheaper for me to just use my 20% off coupon at Harbor Freight, and which this lathe, as I studied it in the store, I thought was gonna work perfect. And so I began to design the treadle lathe specifically around this lathe because it had just a little plastic compartment here that came off easily. I would be able to modify, take the motor off. So I bought a brand new lathe, took the motor off, stuck it in a box somewhere, and then began to figure out how I'm going to integrate a treadle. And so it was a lot of trial and error. This is maybe the third or fourth iteration. The first several that I built, I had to build and rebuild this. That's why you'll see holes and different things. If you looked around on this thing, there's a lot of things that have changed on it over the years to make it more functional. But this was being set up the other thing that's unique about this treadle lathe is that there's like if you search treadle lathe, there's about one video that comes up, and it's in someone's shop, and it's monstrous. And it doesn't seem to get used that much, but it's not portable. we needed something that was portable. So this thing breaks down and could fit in the back of our van with all of our market stuff, our table, our tent, our boxes of goods, and the treadle lathe. And tonight brought my whole family plus this just in the back of a minivan. So took us maybe 20 minutes to set up, 20 or 30 minutes to have it up and running. So I'm going to demonstrate this tonight, and if you have questions, just raise your hand. I'd be glad to answer questions either about the treadle lathe or about what we're going to do. I'm going to start with a classic throw top, and I'm going to show that now sometimes when we go to the market, we'll prep our blanks ahead of time because, you know, in our shop, we don't use this. In our shop, we have powered lathes in our shop. We have 3 powered lathes in our shop, and we'd rather. Yeah. No. We do not use this thing voluntarily because it's a workout. It really is. We have tried to do our best. I've tried to, you know, I'm not an engineer. But there's a lot of, and I'm terrible at math. I'm about flunked out of math, and I had to learn some geometry and math to figure this out. But a treadle lathe works on the concept of leverage, you know, so you have a lever down here. And then also, just to kind of explain some of the parts, if you've seen the old freight trains and how the wheel works, that's exactly how this works. So this can actually go forward or backwards. So if I spin it one way and start pumping it, it's going to go spinning backwards, which is not ideal, but if we spin it the other way, so it works either way. We have this wheel is pretty heavy, but it wasn't heavy when I would stop, if I'd let up, it would stop. So I learned also about it. So this is a flywheel, so this is just an old grinding wheel, which I add a little piece of wood just because at the market we'd have so many little kids around, and it doesn't matter how much you tell them to kind of stay away, they get really close, and so I tried to make it as safe as possible. But this flywheel here is enough weight so that when I let up, it still goes for a couple pumps, so I can actually take a break. The other thing at the market when we're turning, probably the number one question. Does anybody want to take a guess what the number one question would be when you see someone operating a treadle lathe? Anybody? It's not that one, but that's a good question. I don't know. I'm guessing at about 800 RPMs. You know, we haven't had a tachometer so it's probably 800 to 1,000, depending. No, the number one question we get is, do you have one leg bigger than the other? Seriously, that's what people ask. Oh, and let me get some safety glasses on here. And do you have one leg bigger than the other? And it's like, nope, because we do actually shift legs. All right, so when turning with a treadle lathe, what's different, and this is a very dull spur drive going into a very hard block of ash. This ash came from a friend of mine who's actually, his son had a tree that went down, was rotten, has some nice spalting to it. But the thing about a treadle lathe that is so much different than turning in your shop is that you can't body position, as you know, if you've done any classes on proper stance, you can't keep a proper stance with a treadle lathe. It's all, you've got to continue to keep this thing pumping. So I can switch legs, and so that's kind of how you have to move around, is like. So I wanted to demonstrate, even though, like, if we went to the market, I would probably prep a blank ahead of time so as to not waste a lot of my energy going from square to round. But I wanted you to see that we can go from square to round, you know, with this. It's not hard. Anybody that wants to try this later is more than welcome to come up and pump it and give it a try. This is not hard at all. But as soon as I put my tool into it, Now you start to feel it. You get a workout. It actually does, everything responds to the pressure going into this wood. So you can't take a big bite out of this. You really got to take it easy, because the more you try to take off of this wood, the stronger your leg needs to be. So what I'll do here, just kind of typical of all spindle turning, I just need to get this down to a diameter where I can fit it into my chuck. So I'm going to put a tenon on it. Let's see here. So, and also my children have all learned with traditional tools. I'm not opposed to, I think we have one carbide tool in our shop. It's a hollowing tool. But for the most part, we use traditional tools, which of course require the skill of sharpening. But Dad does most of the sharpening, but we do use jigs. And so the kids have little by little learned to sharpen. Although I sharpened all of our tools for the first time in a while. They've been doing it, and I did reset some profiles today. Okay, so in turning a throw top, the traditional throw top, I'm using this once again as a piece of ash. Generally you need about 2.5 inches. So a lot of the stock that we turn for tops and things is going to be 2 inches. So it's a little bit harder to get a piece of wood for a bigger. The bigger the throw top, the better it's going to be. You can't be too big, but you don't want to be too small. If they're too small, they just don't work real great. We had to learn how to. We had to learn how to throw these after we started making them. We didn't know, so we had to watch YouTube videos. Just because I didn't know. I never grew up with these kind of tops. This ash is probably 4 or 5 years old. So we're not turning anything green. So that's also a little more of a challenge with a treadle lathe. So this is the reason why normally we would prep blanks ahead of time, or we use Hannah tonight. When Hannah turns, she'll be using just 2-inch dowel. And we used to get the dowel, maple dowel, out of a place in Houston, but the price has really skyrocketed. It used to be pretty affordable just to buy 2-inch dowel to start as for tops. So we're kind of gravitating away from using that dowel anymore. But she'll be using it tonight. It's great for the treadle lathe because she didn't have to spend a lot of her energy like I just did, because that's the hardest part right there. Going from square to round with a treadle lathe. It's the most work that but it can be done. Okay, I'm not quite round yet. I know this is really boring, this part of it. Okay, now this is like most of your pen turners. So we turn a lot of pens, we sell a lot of pens. And in fact, Hannah, who will be demonstrating next, making a little finger top, Hannah she actually does our bulk pens orders. So I know just in the last few months, she's done like 20 pens and one order for 60 pens. So she's good at like knocking out a bunch of pens. But How many pen turners use a skew chisel for planing cuts? Okay, good, because with basically when we're doing pens, essentially roughing gouge and a skew chisel, and you just won't get a nicer cut. So if you're not familiar with planing cuts, they are kind of tricky. They're easier on pens than they are on something like this. I don't need to do a planing cut right now, but I'll just demonstrate how. I'm not completely round yet, so it's still a little bit rough, but I would definitely, there's actually Stuart Batty's dad has a great video on using the skew chisel and doing planing cuts. So at least for pen turners, I just think if you don't do that, learn how to do that on your Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, now we're going to start shaping this. I'm using a 1/2 inch. This is a 1/2 inch spindle gouge. We're not using a real aggressive, it's a bit of a fingernail grind. We use jigs. I use Ron Brown's number 2 setup block for this profile. And then I take the heel off. So I like this. This is even a better tool with a powered lathe because it can be a little more aggressive. But when you're turning the trick to a throw top is just to get your first angle that you've got to just carve it out, start going down and down and down. This is when the legs really start burning. And you'll see me at times shifting. You will appreciate your 1/2 horsepower or 3/4 horsepower. And you'll say, yeah, a horse is a lot stronger than me. But it does give you appreciation for old school turning, you know, that we take it for granted. Plus this ash is not real kind. I could have picked, if I'd had a bigger piece of like soft maple, that would have been better, but a little faster. This piece of ash is probably a little bit harder than the walnut that CJ is going to be turning when he gets up here. So in a throw top, it's got the tip. You got to have a little notch for the string. And the mistake that I used to make at the beginning was to try to do that too soon. I was taking too much of a bite out of that. Not enough horsepower. So the thing that I learned about making these throw tops is that if you try to make the notch for the tip first, you're just making yourself more trouble. Just make a cone. And so this profile is probably a little steep, but and if anybody has made tops, here's a question for you. Do you want a really sharp tip or do you want a dull tip? You want a dull tip. We learned that the hard way too. We thought, oh, we need like the most precise sharp tip on a top. And all of our tops would wobble. And we kept trying to figure out, why do our tops wobble? We thought, is it the weight? No, it's like you don't want too sharp of a tip. Okay, so I've got kind of a basic shape, and I'm not done yet, but now this is going to be my tip. And so I'll need to just kind of come in and begin to form the groove that will hold the string. And so instead of doing this earlier, I just go down, and then you're kind of coming in. You kind of got to think about it as just, I'm not, kind of like 90 degrees to your other angle. And once again, with turning with the treadle lathe, this is not the position of your body that you want to be in for turning. So you just have to forget all those instructions on how you should have your body positioned, because it just doesn't apply. Gosh, I'm really regretting bringing this piece of ash. Woo! Okay, so that's going to work. You know, they do have power there. You'd have to pay for it. But the thing about demonstrating, as soon as you bring a powered lathe in, it's one thing. You can see that most of the chips stay pretty close. I'm not throwing stuff, outside of our 10-foot boundary. When you're at a market, you get 10 by 10 space. It's been challenging enough setting up, and when it's a windy day, having your wood dust go onto your neighbors, which is no good. They're not happy about that. They're not excited about that. So we've had to really try to do our best to keep the amount of dust and things down. But yeah, if it was an electric lathe, it's just more dangerous. This is turning very slow. So, and you can stop it very quickly. So, whew, that's a workout. I might do this in 2 parts. Have CJ come up and have Hannah come up and demonstrate her top. But yes.
Your lathe would be modified where the treadle was bumped from this side.
Anything can be done. The answer is yes. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I was at SWAT one year, and they had a lathe that was hooked up to like a bicycle. And so you'd have someone pedaling it. So that's a thought. But, I thought the idea would be, like, could you do this, with a person? Okay, so now what we're going to do is remove some of the wood at the top end as you kind of... That's what I love about wood turning, is there's no measure twice, cut once. You're just kind of... This is actually, for good time's sake, this is our original set of 7 tools off of Amazon, Savannah. Low quality steel. But I've got a nice Sorby parting tool, but it's a little thinner, so this one will remove a little more wood for me. I'll probably embarrass CJ, but if you go to my personal website, philliptelfer.com, which is not our wood turning website, we have a family short film we made back in 2013 called Work Before Play, and it has CJ making a throw top at the age of 11, starting with a log from So he goes through, in 7 minutes, we show the whole process from log out in the woods, which was a piece of cherry, to throw top in 7 minutes. So, and a little story that goes along with it. But that was when he was just starting. He'd probably be embarrassed at his technique, but hey, if you're 11 and you're turning throw tops, I don't care. I think that's pretty cool. Okay, so we're almost... This is the fun part. I need to go down a little bit more. You'll see CJ, when he turns, just watch him. He does this. He'll lean against this so he can really get into it. And so when you see him doing that, he's not being lazy. He's like figuring out ways to just get more power out of this thing. Okay, so it's not too bad. What I like to do is, once again, I don't want to fuss too much with this one. We're going to make it functional. So I'll just clean it up a little bit, and I'm going to sand the tip down because I don't want a sharp tip. Because I'm demonstrating this and getting the work out at the same time, I'm certainly not going to fuss with this. And then one of the things we like to do is burn lines. CJ will do that with this. We've done this all along. It gives a little bit of a... So if you've never burned a line, a decorative line, you do need to start with a little groove. I just used... So this was a 3/8 inch Sorby spindle gouge that just got too far where I couldn't put it in the jig anymore. I couldn't shape it. So just make a little point. You reuse your tools, make something new out of them. And then this little tool for burning, you can buy stuff, but we just made this. And I want to say this is a piece of bicycle cable for for your brake, like a brake cable. I've tried different wires, and brake cable wire seems to just work the best for us. I've tried various things to do this, but this we had it around. Just hope they don't have smoke alarms. Although if the sprinkler system, I'll get cooled off real quick. And then be careful not to touch that. Okay, and then we, since this is pen turners, one of our favorite products here, this is not is Pens Plus. Anybody ever use Pens Plus? It's one of the reasons we like Pens Plus for our toys is because we actually do a lot of stuff with painting, with acrylic paints, and most other friction polishes burn the paint right off. It actually just melts the paint. And but Pens Plus actually doesn't take, it will if you're not careful, but it's the most paint friendly. So we like to put down some color, and then we like to put a little sheen over the top of it. Some also, I know a lot of people do CA finishes. To each their own. We don't do CA finishes. I'm just kind of sensitive to, we use CA, but it's just burns your nose and it's kind of toxic, but gives you a great hard finish. But what we have found, and this is just from our experience because we've sold tons of pens, and what sometimes we want the shiny finish, but people really like a more natural finish. They like when they get a wood pen, they want it to look like wood, not like plastic, you know. So that's just, if you like that look, that's good. Then you make pens that look like that. But if you're making pens to sell, people in fact, they like minimal finish, almost like a satin finish. And I've got friends that have bought pens from us, and they're still using them. I see them all the time, and they just love the wood. And so Pens Plus is good for that because it's not the most durable finish, and but it's durable enough, and it's just super forgiving, super easy. We usually do like 3 coats on anything we do, but okay, and then all we have left is just to part this off, and then we'll have Hannah come up and give her dad a break while I cool off and find the smaller parting tool. And then what I'll do while Hannah's turning is I brought some string, and I'll cut a string, and we'll at some point tonight, after I practice out of sight and make sure that I can get this thing to spin, we'll demonstrate it before it gets raffled off. Okay, so in the throw top, it does have to have this little knob on top, so this for the string to wind around. And if you've never wound one of these things, like we never wound them, then you got to watch the YouTube video. I actually made a little video showing how to do this that I would just text to customers. Because like, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, I'll text you a video. So the last thing I'll do here is just kind of soften this little top edge. That is usually where it's going to catch if you're not careful, because there's not a lot of room to do that. But I just want to soften it a little bit so it's not a real hard edge, and then I'll just part it off. We thought we'd make this flywheel over here multi-purpose, so we just took an old belt from a sander and just hot glued it to here, so it actually does function as a little sander. A little bit of finish on the top, which Pens Plus is also good for, is just doing a quick little. And there we have it, a classic throw top made from reclaimed ash. All right, so this is my not 10-year-old daughter, Hannah. This is Hannah. She's 16 now. And Hannah has been turning since she was 9. She was going to the market with us, I think at about the age of 6 or 7, to help sell stuff. So we got her involved. And then about the age of 9, she came to me and she said, "Dad, I want to turn." And I said, "You're too young. Your brother was 11 when he started." So I just, dads, why do we come up with this stuff, I'm like, it's so arbitrary. And so I told her, "No, you can't turn until you're 11, because that's how old your brother was." And she kept bugging me. So I put so many obstacles in front of her. I'm like, "You're too young." So I said, "You're going to have to read this book on wood turning." And it was a thick book on fundamentals. She went through it, plowed through it, cover to cover. I'm like, well, that was just the first step. Next step, you're going to watch this video. So then she watched the video. No, then you got to read this book on fundamentals. So she did everything I said, and then she still wanted to turn. And I said, well, she's determined. So then I just built the treadle lathe. I said, "You can start on the treadle lathe." I thought that'll cool her off real quick. She is not going to want to, but she was so determined. So she actually learned on this treadle lathe. But if you asked her, she hates this thing. So she does not like the treadle lathe. So that little ballerina that they're raffling off tonight, she made, and she does that on a little mini jet. Yeah, I think so. Not many kids when they're 9 years old are making some pretty good cash every weekend. And all the kids, made pretty good money at the market for kids, So we, once again, this small family business was not intended to replace my day job. And the primary purpose was something to do with my children, to get in the shop. Now, I see a lot. I'm a grandfather now, and my oldest granddaughter is around 6, I think. She's 6. I've got a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-month-old grandchild. So I'm looking forward to teaching them in the shop. So, it's a lot about mentoring. And so if your kids are grown up and out of the house, maybe it's a grandkid, or maybe it's a kid on the block who just needs someone to pour into them. So I think we have a generation right now that is spending so much time in front of screens, but it's what they think they want, but it's not what they need. And what they really need is the personal touch. And so I think any kind of program that's involving young people is important, and you can do that. And woodturning is a great way to get young people involved. So Hannah didn't want to do a lot of talking, so she asked if I'd talk for her.
Spin top, so like I said, this is just a 2-inch maple dowel, and I just added a tenon on it, which is I think extra important on the treadle lathe, just because you kind of need to be as secure as possible.
We have a debate. CJ doesn't always make tenons, and that's a personal choice, but Hannah learned the fundamentals. CJ and I learned as we went, because like when we started wood turning, we really didn't know what we were doing. Like I told you, I did one rotation in high school, and they didn't give us any training. So, okay, yeah. So there's nothing that beats just fundamentals, and Hannah actually is our best turner. She presents the tool better than any of us. I think because I made her watch all those, videos and read those books. And then plus when you're using a treadle lathe, you can't be sloppy. If you get a lathe spinning at 3,000 RPMs, you can stick a spoon into it and maybe start shaping something. It's not going to be pretty, but you can get really sloppy with turning when you have, a sharp tool and high speeds. But if you're using really slow speeds like this at about 800 RPM, you do need a sharp tool, but you need to present the tool correctly. And I remember we were demonstrating at Woodcraft for one of their special events a few years back, and some of their teachers were kind of blown away because they said, well, we only teach using carbide tools right now, and we actually don't have a lot of people using the traditional tools. And so they were just kind of blown away that there was young people using traditional tools and knowing how to use them, how to present the tool into the wood. Once again, I'm not knocking carbide tools. They're wonderful. You just have to make choices, and I wanted my kids to learn. So we have made a ton of, over the year, when we first started turning, that's all we did was made tops. That's how we started. So we made throw tops like this. We made a lot of finger tops. And you just learn the basic skills doing tops. And tops are fun. People love to spin tops. I like to keep one at my desk just as a fidget toy to spin once in a while if I'm bored silly. And so tops have become just a staple. And we make up things other than toys now. We started making a lot of kits, like from Rockler, like the pizza cutter kits, the bottle opener kits, the ice cream scoops. So just making handles for those. And unfortunately, those kits have gotten really costly. You used to be able to get the pizza cutter kit on sale for $15.99 not many years ago. Those are now selling at $25.99 unless you can get them on sale, and maybe they go down to like $20. And if you're making them as gifts for friends, that's great because it makes a great gift. You're going to have a couple dollars in wood. Okay, hold on. I just heard something ching. And this is part of the treadle. This is just part of life with the treadle lathe. And there's all these moving bits and pieces. I got to find. Here it is. There's so much pressure in this thing. it gives us, there we go. You know, I don't know if I've ever weighed it. It's heavy. What I used was standard lumber for the core. So glued a bunch of 2x6s together, cut out a circle, and then the outside, I wanted to look a little prettier than dimensional lumber. So the outside is poplar. It's glued together poplar, so it's all solid wood. I've never weighed it, but
How did you figure out the size of the wheel that you had?
so it all starts with the height of the lathe, because you can't have a wheel any bigger than this unless you're going to have your lathe sitting up this high. I had to figure out like what's our ideal height, and what is the height of the lathe, and then how big of a wheel can I get underneath that, and so that determined the size of the wheel, and then after that, it was really trial and error to figure out the ratios of that wheel to the first pulley. This little Harbor Freight has actually 5 pulley settings inside on its belt. So we're not actually running at the highest possible speed right now. We're at the second to the highest possible speed. We could put it down one and it'd be easier to turn, but it would be slower. So you can go easier, but you have to go slower, and that makes it harder. So this is kind of a trade-off. We had to just figure out what's the trade-off on the pulley sizes. Even with the geometry of figuring out just the arm, and so it wouldn't bind up with the lever, with the pedal, was probably my biggest challenge. Yes, we lose something again? Okay, hold on, Hannah. This one's giving us trouble. Let me see if I can get it, move it in a little bit. I won't tell you where these little things are made, but I don't think they were in America. Some of this could be resolved if you weren't taking it apart, but I had to design this also so that it could come in pieces. And so this comes into, so the lathe comes off the top. We've got that bolted down with some threaded inserts. So we've got four bolts anchoring so the lathe comes off, the spindle comes off, and that flywheel comes off. Then the legs come off, and the wheel comes off, and the pedal. So it actually comes down pretty compact when it's all said and done. If you've turned tops before, some people turn tops the opposite way that Hannah is doing. So they'll do the handle first and then build down to the tip. And if you have success with that, wonderful. But we've just had more success doing it the other way, in having a nice, fine, balanced top, is to do your tip first. But what you have to do is you have to finish the top. So she... well, you haven't finished the top. Are you going to finish the top before you go any further?
Not at this point.
Okay. So she's going to... Okay, I'll trust her. She knows what she's doing. But generally, you would finish the bottom of the top first, and then work your way. We'll use, this is a half of a defunct yo-yo, because we used to make yo-yos. Anybody ever make a yo-yo? Oh, they're a pain. They are a pain. So you got to get a gram scale, and then you've got to make sure your halves are the same weight. But then if you're making a yo-yo, you need to make sure that the wood that you're using is very consistent in the grain. Oh, so this is a half of a defunct yo-yo, and what we will use is we'll stick this on the tip of our, we use this to just stick on the tip to finish the tops. After you, if she would have finished her tip ahead of time, and you know, you want to still keep some pressure on it without ruining your tip entirely, just any kind of piece of wood that has a hole in it works for that. So Hannah and Grace right now, they have on our Etsy shop, much of what they sell are these little ballerinas. I'll also show you these. So these are dancers, and we first saw in a little book on turning toys, we saw dancers, except they were really ugly. And we liked the concept of the little arms, but we didn't like the look of them. So I was the first one to begin to design a different dancer, and then poor CJ, he's a manly man, but I taught him how to make ballerinas. He was a little embarrassed about that, but I'm like, they're money makers, and at the time, he was the only one that could do it. So he started making the ballerinas, and then as soon as Hannah got better at turning, then we said, you know, okay, you can move on to other things. So so she's been making these ballerinas, and there's not really, I don't have a tray or something to, let's see here. Use this little piece of wood here. Could probably, so when you spin them, they're little arms. And then we thought, boy, it'd be good to have something for boys, you know. Not that a boy couldn't spin a ballerina, but so we don't have one tonight, but Grace started making little ninjas. So they're little black tops with little arms that flay out. But then Grace also wanted to, so she makes these little European dancers. And so this is a lot of what they're selling on Etsy these days. It's kind of a niche market. And so those will be raffled off tonight. It's Timeless Wood Toys. I think that's right. Is it the Etsy shop, Timeless Wood Toys? While Hannah's finishing that off, I'm going to cut a string for this throw top. If you're doing yo-yos and throw tops are going to be dependent on the height of the user. So if you're going to sell them and you're selling them to a child, then you have to let the parent know you can cut the string shorter. And the string should be waist height. So that's the same thing with a yo-yo. So you can imagine, we had a lot of yo-yos ruined at this shop or at the farmer's market because kids would just grab them and pick them up and then go wah, and the string would be too long, and it would just hit the ground, bam, and then bye-bye to a nice pristine finish, and then you'd have a nicked yo-yo and a little bit harder to sell. So generally, so you're going to want to do it waist height, but also just, whether it's a yo-yo or a throw top, let someone know, cut the string to the height of the user. And when we were learning, after we watched our first YouTube video, it was mayhem in our house. All of our children with throw tops, seeing if any of us could get them to spin. And so my wife was very patient with us in having throw tops just flying around the house. And they fly, if you don't know what you're doing. They just fly. So you just, so it's right here. So you just put a knot at one end, and then you just put a slip knot on the other end for the finger. And that's all there is to it. It's just string, and the thicker the string, the easier it is. And this is cotton, so you want it kind of nappy. It's actually, it's not an advantage to have the top too slick, but a nappier string is better. So I try to stay away from like nylon paracord type of string and just use a heavy cotton string. Actually, a small little rope even works better. We had much success using a small piece of rope to get them to spin when we were not skilled at doing it. So, and then I'm not going to demonstrate it now because we'll have CJ come up in a little bit, and I will go practice first before I embarrass myself in front of you all. And yes, yeah, I'd be glad to pass it around. I'm going to also wrap it the way it's supposed to be wrapped. A lot of times we put paint on the tops, and my oldest daughter, Elizabeth, we didn't want to demonstrate it tonight because then you have to wait for the paint to dry, but a lot of times when we paint, and there we go here, we want to see how it spins. So we'll put paint, sometimes we'll use chatter tools, if you've seen chatter tool work, and put the paint inside the chatter and then sand off the surface. But Hannah's a good straight top spinning, very little wobble. And that's good wood turning fundamentals. So we'll pass that around. Okay, CJ, you're up. CJ's going to be turning. How many know what a Scottish spurtle is? Okay, so a Scottish spurtle, we were traveling in upstate New York, and so yeah, we've used felt pens. The felt pens are they're costly, and when you're doing this for a business and you're trying to make a profit, you're really trying to minimize stuff that you're going to spend a lot and get a little out of. Felt pens just dry up very quickly, and then if you get the really nice ones, they'll last for so long. But for anything we were doing, it was really all about like trying to figure out how to make it profitable. And so yeah, we did do pens, but we've, for the most part, keep ditching the idea of pens. So we use the acrylic paints that you get at Hobby Lobby, and they range like $1. They're $1. They go on sale. You know, you get $1, and we didn't bring it tonight, but we have a little homemade cart or a little basket that just has probably 30 paint colors. And my daughter Elizabeth developed a really nice style of painting that we've used ever since then. And she'll take just a piece of paper towel, and then you'll take maybe 2 or 3 colors. So you find some nice colors that work together, and she would put like a drop of each acrylic all together, and just while the lathe was turning slowly, let it all just kind of, without moving it around too much so it blends in, just kind of get a nice streaky, striped look that, so you can't overwork it. You just kind of got to go for it. And it makes a beautiful little swirly look to it, but then you have to let it sit and dry. And then we put Pens Plus over the top of it. We would have demonstrated that tonight. It just takes too long, to wait for the drying time. But we've done a lot of that, and so.
Okay, yep. So, this is me. I'm not going to use a tenon because I'm a little rebellious. This is just, let's see, it's about a little more than 1 inch in diameter there.
Tell them a little bit about spurtles also,
Yep,
CJ.
so Scottish spurtle is a traditional stirring stick that actually originates back to the 15th century, and originally used for mixing porridge because it actually helps porridge not be lumpy, and so it just goes back many years. And so I've made a lot of these for the market, and they're one of my best sellers. And walnut is actually the wood that sells the most. So. Yep. So there's quite a few of our projects, we will sort of adopt the project, and then other people won't make it, and so it helps, because I think there'd be a little family drama if there was competition.
Yeah, we're not socialists. We're capitalists, and so they can only make money on what stuff that they make and stuff they sell. So our sales sheet is divided up into 4 sections for each wood turner, and whatever they sell gets marked down on their side of the sheet. Everybody splits the booth fee evenly. So the booth fee at the New Braunfels Farmers Market is $40 a week. So that gets divided between 4 of us. So we each pay $10 a week. The children also have to pay their portion. You know, we collect the sales tax, and so that comes out, and they have to buy their own materials. Now, at the beginning, I covered a lot of that because I was just trying to encourage them. So they thought they were more profitable than they were, and I took all the hit. I actually took nearly all of. I was actually the top earner among the kids because I was just faster than them. But so I outsold them, 2 to 1, 3 to 1 for many years, and then, but I took all my proceeds and I bought equipment, and I would just invest and build our shop. We have a dedicated 12 by 24 wood shop that CJ and I built with our own hands, and it's full of equipment that all got paid for by selling stuff at the farmers market. So by the time I retire, I'll have a pretty sweet shop. But right now, I don't go to the market anymore, and I'm actually not turning a whole lot. The kids, it's just the 3 kids now that are gotten to the point where they don't need dad. I don't have to drive them to the market anymore. They all have licenses. They can buy their own products. They can buy their own materials. They know how to run the booth, and so that's mission accomplished for me. CJ's actually making a living with wood, but not just with wood turning. He's presently building his first tiny home. So something he's been interested in for years. So he's also knows how to frame and knows how to build. We just love working with wood. So I built all of what we just remodeled a 1929 home in Spring Branch, and so got to do fun things like build out my kitchen myself. So built out all of our kitchen cabinets, and we've over the years, from bookshelves to little tables to whatever, it gets into your blood. Wood gets into your blood, and then. So yeah, the first time we heard about spurtles, we were in upstate New York, visiting some friends, and when they learned that the kids were learning to wood turn, they said, "Oh, you should make spurtles." We said, "Well, what's that?" And so they went in their kitchen, got their spurtle, showed it to us, and they said, "Well, it's just a stirring stick for the kitchen." And we thought, well, why not? We give it a try. Well, they're so popular, and we actually keep several spurtles. We use them every day in our house. I use them for, I make French press coffee every day, so I use it to stir my coffee before I plunge it. They're great because a lot of times when you need to stir in the kitchen, you go for a wooden spoon, but you don't really need the spoon. You just need to stir. And so a spurtle is just a lot easier to clean up. We always use woods. We either use cherry, so tight grains, cherry, maple, or walnut are kind of the 3 woods we stick to. And I have a spurtle. I had a spurtle that I had for years, and then one of the members in my family, I won't say who, decided that they would use it as a Vitamix tamper, and that didn't really work, and it wrecked my favorite spurtle, so I had to make another one. But they just last forever, and they just get used all the time. And for some reason, I don't know, there's some show or something. Do you know, CJ, what was it that started getting people interested in spurtles again?
I'm not sure what show it is, and actually, a lot of spurtles that are popular nowadays are actually a different type of spurtle. It's more of a flat spatula sort of a thing, which is also a traditional Scottish spurtle. I believe they call it a Couthie spurtle, but it's made for flipping oat cakes. But yeah, you'll see it on TV. Like, that's a more known spurtle. Has the same name, but slightly different. So I think that's what a lot of people who have heard of a spurtle actually know, is the flatter version.
So yeah, also CJ, kind of talk about like what's the traditional shape.
Yep. So traditional shape says a pointier tip, and there's many different styles and designs. I've sort of landed on this one because it's easy to make and looks nice, and then this just has a nice grip for the hand right there. And then here on the top here, a lot of spurtles traditionally have a thistle, which is a national emblem of Scotland. That is, just a design feature. So I try to add that to all of my spurtles as well.
And then also for stuff that you're using in the kitchen, you can use, some people like walnut oil. We use either coconut oil or butcher block conditioner, which are all food grade safe. So I'm trying to remember which brand you can get at Home Depot or any, of the butcher block conditioner, but we've used that a lot. Just it gives it a nice little sheen. It's more of a selling point than anything. But
How long is this?
the blank starts at 13 inches.
Now what I'm doing here is I didn't have as much wood on the end as I would have liked, so I actually just back it out a little bit because I have plenty to grab on with the chuck here. Because we've got the tail stuck here, it should be pretty much perfectly balanced, even though I'm just moving out a little bit. That just gives me a little more room to work with here.
Also, CJ's had some opportunity to do some unique projects. So we had a customer come to the farmer's market, and they had a family heirloom rocking chair that had been neglected. And so all the spindles from the back of the chair were missing, and the back was broken in half. But it had the spindles on the shorter spindles on the arms, which showed us what the profile was. And so CJ actually recrafted all the spindles and reconstructed that chair. And I told him at the time, I said, I don't really believe there's many people alive today that could actually do that kind of work. So I was proud of him. It was a proud dad moment. We weren't sure with the chair. We thought it was white oak. We might have been wrong, but that's what we made the spindles out of. And it was, of course, tricky when you have the old patina. We spent a lot of time just trying to match up so that, but the customer was super happy because it was a family heirloom, and I think CJ has a rocking chair in the shop right now, but it's not missing spindles.
Nope. No turning involved.
It's been sitting in the shop for a while. I noticed that today. But CJ does stay busy and always has been. I mean, when you think about a boy at the age of 11 spending every Saturday of his life at a farmer's market and a good portion of his free time working in a shop, then I think it's turned out pretty good, I'm a big believer that you can't just say no to stuff. You have to say yes to something better. So it's one thing for me as a dad to say no to video games in the house, but I had to say yes to something. And that cost me actually more time, money, and energy. It would have been easier just to buy him an Xbox and let him waste his hours playing video games. Doing this required me to spend a lot of time with the kids in the shop, which I thought was a good thing. But not a lot of that is happening these days. So we're hoping to inspire other dads or grandfathers to get involved with younger ones in the shop. When we go to SWAT, it's been a few years. I think we haven't been to SWAT since before the pandemic, but I'd have all my kids in tow, and I'd have to say that there's not many young people there at SWAT. I don't know if does anybody know, have they figured out the median age of wood turners at SWAT? Okay. What's that? No, we haven't carved it. It's usually just like when I make my spurtles, they're a little different than CJ's. I kind of follow, it's basically a ball, and then it tapers outward. Is kind of that traditional shape, but we don't do carving. So.
So, yep. So this is just thistle right here. It's not really it's more of like a side profile. So it looks like a little thistle bloom right there. So.
Yeah, we've had very few injuries, and of course wood turning is relatively safe. You've got the sharp tool in your hand. It's not spinning, but I know CJ once caught his finger when he was younger on the sharp edge of like a piece of oak or something, and it cut him pretty good. And then recently, my daughter Grace had something we've all done, but it was not ideal for her. She was drilling out some blanks for project kits. They were lighter kits, actually cigar torches, and so it had to remove.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Had to remove quite a bit of wood. So she just ordered a brand new Forstner bit and drilled out, and then she backed off the tailstock, and then she inserted the piece into the hole, and it fit just right, but it stuck. And so she was trying to pull it out, and it gave, and she ran her hand right back into that brand new Forstner bit, and that required 3 butterflies to So once again, burning lines in something is super easy to do, and it kind of just jazzes it up a little bit. I have, because I'm a guitar player, so I have tried guitar strings before. So it's kind of similar because they're wound. I think what I like about the bicycle string or the bicycle cable is that a guitar string is wound like this way, whereas the bike cable is just kind of wound up this way, and it seems to be a good combination. I've even tried piano strings because I tore apart an old piano once, and I tried old piano strings. I've tried guitar strings, but we've just had the best success with this bike cable. But whatever works. But this gets pretty hot fast. Is what you want. Yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. But you can get at Walmart, like $1.99 probably or you just find an old cable laying around, repurposed stuff. Yeah. Go to a bike shop, they probably have cutoffs or something or little extras. That's right. And once again, when CJ is making spurtles for the market, he's not using the treadle lathe. He's using our Nova, generally.
Let me think here. Honestly, it's about the same time.
But he wouldn't do like 10 of them in a row on the treadle lathe. We have 3. So we started out with a mini jet, like the 12, what is it, 12, 1221. And then we bought a Nova, which is the 1622 or something. No, it's like a little bit, what is it, 16? It's a Comet, yeah. So that's a little bit bigger one. When he did, it wasn't long enough. We needed a bed extension. When he did that rocking chair, they were just maybe 3/4 of an inch too long. So he would do one end. Actually, I helped him figure it out, but so he would do one end and just not use a chuck and run it into the the headstock and use that little extra space so that to be able to finish them off. And then we bought, since most of the stuff we do is small, so then we bought another, after buying 2 lathes, and we all did not learn soon enough the beauty of variable speed. And so that's one of my biggest regrets in life, not especially with our Nova and our first jet. And so our first jet, which is still functioning and works great, almost never gets used because everybody fights over the variable speed. So we bought one of the newer, the upgrade of the Jet Mini, and it's got the variable speed. This one's variable speed also, and reversible.
And we sand most of our projects up to 400, which we found is, a good finish, but we don't really go higher.
Unless we're doing pens. So if we're doing pens, we'll go maybe 600, and then we use some of the sanding paste, and then we'll finish off with Pens Plus or something similar. Yeah, the great thing is that when you're using a hardwood with a tight grain, it really doesn't need anything. It's just going to look dull and used, but we even stick ours, it's not ideal to stick them in the dishwasher, but sometimes ours goes in the dishwasher, and they're bulletproof, especially cherry, walnut, the hard maple. They're great. I've used mine in coffee so much, if I ever ran out of coffee, I think I could just stick my spurtle in some hot water and make a nice cup of coffee. Yeah, you could.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so normally we would put either, some people are just health conscious, and like, so if you wanted to go like ultra natural, you could use coconut oil, which doesn't go rancid, or like walnut oil. But also, I have no problem using the butcher block, but some people, if they're funny about that, most people don't even ask, but you could use, it's exactly with the butcher block conditioner, except it has a little bit of beeswax in it. So that butcher block conditioner, and so it just holds that, if you're marketing stuff, so if you're setting stuff out, you actually do want it to have a little bit of a sheen to it. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so CJ's done with that. I did do a test, and I got it on the first try. I don't know if don't try to film this, and I'm going to do my best not to try to at least hit a camera. So in the throw top, they're wound, there's a particular way you wound them, but you throw them upside down. And the idea is that when it comes all the way to the end, it comes down to this knob, and this last little bit pulls the top down. And so I'm not an expert by any means, but we've thrown a lot of them, and I'll try not to hit anybody. Well, that was not successful. I was so proud of myself out there when you didn't see it. Second tries, you know. Here we go. So you kind of hold it like the tip of your finger, and if you had more room, you know, you kind of swing it like a racket. There we go. Okay, so CJ, you want to pass that around?
Yep.
And then. All right, do we have time for one more project? Are we good? You guys good? Okay, if you have time for one more. Okay. All right, so the last project we're going to do, here's this. Oh, this is still going. Look at that. We'll just, there's the string. Yeah, so the more weight, like the bigger the top is, you can't spin it with your finger anymore. You do have to have a string or something to get it spinning, but they'll spin longer. So the last project I have prepared here is a cup and ball. Now this one I did prep because it's very hard. I would take for a cup and ball, you just take a Forstner bit, and you already saw me sweating up here. So I did this bit at home, but I would always do that first. So anytime I'm making cup and balls, I take my blanks, I drill out the hole using a Forstner bit, and then I'm using, this is I think a 1 1/4 inch ball that we order online and just buy them in bulk, like 100. I'm not turning these. That's a waste of time. These are so cheap. And you just want the ball to be able to be hidden in there, so it doesn't have to be too much deeper. So I just keep a Forstner bit with a collet, what do they call it, like a collet stop on it, yes. And so it sets my depth, so I know that that's as far as I want to go. This is a piece of beech that someone gave me from a furniture making shop, and they had some cutoffs. I would generally like to use maple. I just had a tragic thing happen to me. I just went to a wholesale place and bought I bought 20 board feet of some 8/4 rough maple. Oh, it's beautiful on the outside. And then I cut into it to make some blanks, and I've never had a piece of maple so worthless. I'm sure it's going to be good for other things, but it was horrible for turning. It's about the equivalent of trying to turn pine or fir. It was no tightness in the grain at all. I don't know what was wrong with that wood, but it was a little bit heartbreaking. Now I'm going to have to go back and buy another piece. So I was hoping to turn some maple because that's our favorite wood. So anybody turn maple? You know, maple's just a joy. It's like butter, you know. It's like butter, you know. So I'll turn maple all day. Cherry is my second favorite wood. And I need the longer. CJ, did you turn that whole thing with this short one? Oh, did you just swap it out? Where'd you put it? Oh, there we go. Thank you. This will just save me a little time. Yeah, so the cup end is on the tailstock, and that's how I'll turn it, and then I'll show you how I finish it out at the end. So this is really stable. It'll be, let me move these off so I don't skewer my feet. Yes, thank you. Yeah, in the shop, we use face shields for when doing any bowl turning. We don't do a lot of bowl turning, but we'll use face shields, but generally we use just safety glasses with small stuff, and then I make my kids wear respirators in the shop, because it's one thing if they were 65 and retired and had a good 20 plus years left of their lives to go ahead and ruin their lungs, but it is a big deal, you know, when you're running high speeds and sanding. This, not big of a deal, but I'm sensitive to, always have been kind of sensitive to dust and stuff. I've had asthma growing up, so has CJ. So we have a dust collection in our shop, but we still wear respirators. Hannah describes it as going into the shop and putting a toilet plunger on her face. But her lungs will thank me for it someday. I tell them if they'd get a little more serious, then they could maybe afford to buy one of those fancy ones with the air circulation. Actually, I've not turned this beach before. Grace makes captive ring rattles, baby rattles. So she's used some of this beach. I've not actually turned it before, so it's turning a lot nicer than that ash was. I'm like, oh. Okay, so we want to be, so we're around there. And I'm going to get just a 3/8 inch spindle gouge. And I always start from the top and work my way down. I usually like to put a little bead just to kind of define the top of the cup. And then I don't really use any measurements because I've made so many of these, I kind of know how deep this is. So, but if you were nervous about it, you could always get out a caliper. One of my big regrets is one of my first cup and balls I ever made was out of a piece of oak from our stock of firewood. And I actually turned the ball out of oak. And it was this beautiful little, it looked so antique because I didn't know what I was doing at the time. It just had this, it just looked old. And we would take it to the market, and we let kids still play with the toys. And so I just used it as a display of toys that kids could play with. And there was a family that came by, and they just fell in love with it. Like, this is the most amazing, would you sell this? And I was like, I don't know. You know, there's like the nostalgia, and then there's the capitalist, you know? I'm like, well, I think sales must have been low that day. And maybe we had sold out. I think that's probably what had happened. I think we'd sold out. We've never been very good at like keeping up on our stock. We kind of make it as we need it. That's not ideal, but it's just how we roll. And so I think I must have been out, and I just kind of had pity. So I sold it to him, and I was kind of regretted it. But actually, I was at the market filling in for one of the kids not too long ago, and this family came by, and this man said, "Oh, it's good to see you here." He says, "I bought this cup and ball from you that was off the display, this little, years ago, and it's very special in our family." And I'm like, okay, I feel better now, So you have my basic cup here. Now it's a matter of like getting wood out of the way, which of course is easier if you've got power. I do have power, but it's limited. So I'll usually at the bottom of the cup, I like to put a bead. So I'll kind of start just kind of figuring out where that's going to be. And then I'll move over to just a roughing gouge and just begin to get rid of. You can make cup and balls if you wanted to be use a little more economy by gluing pieces together, but they're harder to make. We've done them. You save a little bit, but it's just hard to figure out how to turn it if you just glue a little handle on there. I just like the idea of a good old-fashioned one-piece, cup with a handle because you can buy the little cup and balls. They'll sell them in stores for $4 that are made in Mexico, and they're just like a little manufactured cup with a little stick in the bottom of it for the handle. And we're called Timeless Wood Toys. We actually want to do stuff the way it used to be done. So we try to find pictures of what did these things look like back in the day. And then you kind of give it your own little flair. The hardest toy that none of my children have been willing to really learn to do, so they're not done anymore since Dad is not going to shop or going to the market, is a kendama. Does anybody know what a Japanese kendama is? Yeah, it's like a cup and ball, or like a, what do they call it? CJ, what's that other thing called? A bilbicay. Ever see a bilbicay? It's like a cup on one end, has a spike on the other end, and then a big ball. So it's a classic toy. And so you would actually, and the ball would have a hole in it, and you would actually try to spike you could catch it on the cup, or you could flip it over and try to spike it. Well, the Japanese have a version of that, which is called a kendama, and it has two pieces that are both turned and fit together, so it looks like a cross. And it has a big cup. It has a big cup, a medium cup, a small cup, and then the spike and a big ball, like a 3-inch ball with a hole in it. They're amazing. You just YouTube it and see what kids can do with kendamas. But I started making kendamas, and they are a challenge because you have to. They're not glued together; they're just fit together. There's kind of a very established kendama design. So you can't really stray too much from what people are kind of expecting in a kendama. The toy has been around for a long time. I had some friends over that are missionaries, and her name was Carol. She grew up on the mission field in Japan, and when she saw it, she just lit up. She says, "I used to play with one of those as a kid." She was like, "That's so cool. I haven't seen one of these since I was a child." But we got pretty good at demonstrating the kendamas. Okay, so I've got a basic shape here. We talked about planing cuts earlier. So if you have curved, so if you're using pens and anything straight, you just use a straight skew chisel. But if you have any kind of curve on it, just a little curve on yours, so if you have these are like one of our favorite things. And so you can do planing cuts in both directions, and you can kind of just save yourself some sanding. I'm not scraping, I'm trying to do an actual planing cut. So it's a little harder with the treadle lathe because it's hard to get into the position that you need to get in to do this. But anytime we can minimize sanding, the better for our lungs, especially when using the treadle lathe here. But this is a nice smooth, that's actually a smoother finish than I could have gotten with 220 sandpaper. So the most I'll have to do with this is maybe 400 if I wanted to, but it's a toy. So it's not a museum piece. And generally we would paint these. I'd actually paint this section using the kind of that swirly paint design that my daughter came up with. So that's finished, and then it's just a matter of getting rid of a lot of this wood down here. And then what I'll do to finish the handle is I will put the smaller chuck on, and I'll chuck it from inside the cup to finish the handle part. And then we'll let you come up and play with the treadle lathe if you like. And I'll go ahead and assemble this. I brought the string and the cup and the ball, and so we'll get it functional for the... Generally, you don't do a lot of shaping with a rough and gouge, but we do. if you're just trying to move a lot of the bigger the bite, the bigger the thighs. Ooh. Man. Switch legs. Okay. So at this point, we'll just chuck it the other way now. Okay. Where's my mallet? Sorry. And then I just use a little piece of shelf liner. This is a Nova chuck, and this particular jaw, it kind of flares out. So this hole's just a little bit too deeper, so adding this helps give it a little more surface to grip onto. And then I'll just expand into it. Of course, not too tight, or it splits on you. Little CA glue can fix that in a jiffy, but you just want to tighten it until it's not spinning anymore. You can just, it's good enough. If it starts spinning on me, I'll tighten it up. But I want to go easy on it. Finish that off with a spittle gouge. Yep. Okay. Did that a little too soon. There we go. All right, and then just a little bit of sandpaper. Just going to use a little. I'll get that little nub off at the end. So once again, these are toys. They're intended to be rustic and homely, not going for museum pieces. Plus we're only charging, we used to charge like $12 for a cup and ball, so you really don't want to spend a lot of time with finesse on them. Oh, let's put a little finish on it. Yes. Okay, so here we have it, a beach cup and ball. I'll just take this little nub off with our handy little sander. Okay, and there we have it. I'd pass it around, but I want to go ahead and assemble it for you. But that brings us to the end of our little demonstration. So we'll put a string on this, and you guys can raffle it off. Thank you for having us join you for your club meeting tonight. And we're becoming club members. We're gonna join.